everyone, and welcome to another episode of Living on Blockchain. Today, we are speaking to Rachel from HaloFi. Rachel has been working, in the Web3 space for a little while now, and earlier she was working in, Web2 as DevRel, and even before that, she was working as a secondary school teacher. So she's had quite a journey. And it's always very exciting to meet fellow founders and talk to them, ideate with them about the platforms they are building that have real use cases. This was a very interesting conversation, deep diving into various aspects of HaloFi and the new product, that they have just recently launched that has seen lots of users save a lot of money in crypto. So a very exciting conversation indeed. I can't wait for you guys to hear this. Let's deep dive right in.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you so much for making the time to speak to me today. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for inviting me on, Tarisha. It's a real honor to be on here today. Super busy, as I imagine you are, but very good and lots of exciting things in the pipeline.
Excellent. And we would like to know all about that. So, for our listeners, can you tell us a little about your background and how you got into Web3?
Yeah, of course. So my background was actually in development and then later in developer relations. So if you're not familiar with developer relations, it's sort of the marketing side of marketing developer products to developers.
Right.
So I worked for a couple of Web3 crypto projects, also some Web2 more traditional tech companies, Twilio. And yeah, prior to that, I was a JavaScript developer, working a lot of React and some Node. And then actually in another lifetime before that, I actually used to be a secondary school teacher. So I've had quite a few different
Wow.
roles, experiences, but somehow they all tie together in the end. I think
Yeah.
there's definitely lots of skills you pick up along the way, but yeah, quite a wealth of different experience, really.
That sounds very diverse and very obviously, like you said, it all kind of tied up in the end. But how did you, take the leap from, say, a secondary school teacher, then to DevRel, and then now into Web3 as a
Yeah,
founder?
no, it's an interesting question. So I did come via development. So I was a teacher, but I was actually teaching. My undergrad degree is in geography, so I was teaching that. But the school I was teaching at, they also got me to teach graphic design, and I really enjoyed the kind of creative design aspect of that. So it sort of occurred to me that maybe programming would be a good way that I could kind of get the creative aspect of building stuff, and maybe get some more hard skills along the same process. So I left teaching and then I did a boot camp back in 2015, and from that I did a few years working as a developer. But I think I also got into developer relations partly because of my background in teaching, because a
Right.
lot of what you do in DevRel is communication, creating tutorials. You're
Hmm.
dealing with people a lot. So it was actually quite a nice fit between my previous experience and the technical knowledge that I had acquired.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that seems very, logical because as a developer, you're not just because in order to market it to devs, any kind of a product, you need to understand it well, and you need to be able to explain it well. And you can only do that, when you come from a background wherein patience is key, perhaps, so that you can put your point across firmly, but in a way that would make it clear, especially with
Mm.
0 to 1 products, right?
No, definitely. And I think, for me, having that technical background, even now when I do sometimes write code, but it's rare. It'd be more of a prototype or something quickly. But having this kind of background really does help with the understanding of like how you stitch things together, thinking about architecture, thinking about APIs, SDKs. So for me, getting that boot camp and getting those years of working as a developer was actually really, really foundational in helping me kind of grow in tech, essentially.
Right, absolutely. I completely agree, I think. So, when you started working in DevRel, was that in a Web2 company or was that in a Web3 company?
It's actually in a Web3 company, but I
Okay.
got into DevRel when I was kind of unofficially when I was working at a Web2 company, because I started to host meetups and talk at events. So sort of kind of transitionary, but the first kind of paid job was in a Web2 company, in a Web3 company.
Oh, okay. And can you mind telling us like about that company and how was your experience there?
Yeah, so I worked for a company called Lisk. They are a blockchain project.
Hmm.
They building a kind of JavaScript client blockchain based out of Berlin. So I learned a bunch of stuff around their delegated proof of stake. So I learned a lot about the kind of community governance aspect. Definitely when you're DevRel, you're very community facing. So that was like really fascinating to see. And yeah, it was just like a good way for me to start working in the space of crypto and Web3. But I'd already been involved in my kind of spare time for about almost a year before that. So this is I got in 2017. I think it's quite common that kind of bull runs pull people in. And then I started working full time in 2018.
Wow. Okay. And I'm very curious about people who kind of work initially in Web3 and then Web2, and I'm sorry, then move to Web3. And yours is a journey pretty much like that. So how did you make that leap?
I think for me, it was quite a nice transition because the Web2 company I was working for when I started to host meetups and using their space to do that was an identity company. So even though they were Web2, they worked a lot with like crypto exchanges, providing like identity KYC solutions. And there was quite a lot of people within that company who were quite interested in crypto. So and I think they were also working on a decentralized identity research project as well. So there was actually kind of a bit of an overlap in the kind of Web2 space and the Web3 space that kind of got me in. But I would say it's quite different in the sense that obviously when you work in Web3, you have this kind of two-way engagement with the community that you really just don't have. The kind of relationship with your users is very different when you're in Web2 versus Web3.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. So can you tell us perhaps how was this a bit of a cultural shock to you? The way the communication changes in Web2 versus Web3 with the community or with your potential users.
Yeah, I think it was, for me, it wasn't a huge culture shift because I had also, by this point, I'd been in the Web3 community. So I'd been in, the Discords and Rocket Chat and Reddit, etc. But I think obviously it kind of scales up when you're doing it full time. Especially I think for me, when you go through the kind of market cycle from 2017 into 2018, it's like a very different sentiment in the community. So I think that's definitely something that you get exposed to, like no matter what you're kind of doing in the space. So I think that was a different experience. But I think it's like the community, it does bring a lot of opportunities. It's great for like having that dialogue, getting user feedback, kind of co-creating and building. But of course, like it does require some kind of thought about how you approach things, and how does it there's always like a kind of relationship that you are building with the community and the community members.
Absolutely. I think that is the most imperative thing, that you're constantly sort of building an engagement and a relationship with these potential users who are actually your community members at the moment, and that is what kind of sets Web3 apart from Web2. So just so that if to understand if I'm getting it right, you were initially working for a company that were also dabbling in Web3, and that is how you got introduced to Web3, or were you already dabbling with the tech before coming in contact with your team who were creating the ID product, among other things?
Yeah, so it's almost like the Web2 company I was working for, I think at that point they didn't, or I still think to this day they don't have any production Web3 products or code. But because they deal with identity, a lot of their clients and biz dev work would be with exchanges, crypto exchanges. So there was like a kind of relationship with the industry. But actually during that time, I did also start to, work with Remix, start deploying like Solidity ERC20 contracts, just starting to learn some of the basics around like kind of EVM development. And there was a few developers from that company who are also kind of going on that journey at the same time. I think also like, obviously when it is a kind of a buzzy time in crypto, people kind of get in and get excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that is when it's most noisy, and that is what kind of draws the crowds mostly. Not always the good kind, but yeah, a lot of builders get encouraged as well, but a lot of speculators get encouraged at that time as well. So now,
Yeah, I
coming
was
to, yeah,
definitely during that time. I bought a bit of crypto at the beginning of that year. Obviously, it's nice to see it go up in price, but typically
right, yeah.
I was naive and didn't sell it. So I did become. I think there's that meme about I'm in it for the tech, right? And then I was like,
Yeah.
no, 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 I'm learning. I'm learning solidity. I'm in it for the tech. It doesn't matter. So I was that meme.
Right. A lot of us are. I think we all become that meme at some point or the other. You stay for as long as the long-term builders stay in crypto. I think all of us are a meme at some point. Then that same meme. Yeah. So now coming to what you're doing currently, can you tell us a little about HaloFi and what you're building? Because the premise itself is very, very exciting, and I'll tell you why once you tell me how you got around to building it and what the platform does.
Yeah. So at HaloFi, we're all about making it easy for people to save with crypto, get the benefits of DeFi and yield on stable tokens, but doing it in a really accessible and mobile friendly way. It's our vision really to build crypto that almost not building for degens, building for like non-degens, building for I don't know, more regular people. So we have a product that we launched back in November. It's called HaloFi Save. We've been around actually for almost 3 years. So we have another product called HaloFi Challenges, but I think it's most interesting for me today to talk about our new product, which is HaloFi Save. And this is it's a mobile friendly interface into DeFi. So you can go there, you can easily top up. We work with various different fiat on-ramping partners and then get access to earning like APY, earning yield on dollar peg stable tokens. We also make it easy for people to kind of set goals and save towards the goal. So it's almost a little bit like sort of the fintech like challenger bank interface into saving with stable tokens. So really that is our mission, to help make this more accessible. I think if you go to, you can go to a lot of the DeFi interfaces if you already have like MetaMask set up and you're familiar with them and you've done your research on things like impermanent loss and you understand the risk. But for like 90% of the population, they don't have time to do that, and it's like too many overheads. So we want to smooth that out, make it easier for people to get going, and hopefully just make the benefits more readily available to a much wider audience of people.
Right. No, I think that is very, very important, right? Because we need to cater for people other than degens as well, because that's otherwise going to be a very, very small user base, like you mentioned. And making DeFi accessible, I think, is key for reaching anywhere close to mass adoption that we keep talking about.
No, definitely. And I think for most people, like even setting up a wallet can be tricky, and it's
very daunting.
Very daunting. So it's really exciting to see there's a lot of innovation coming, things like account abstraction, making it easier for people to get going. We work with a number of different wallet partners who've done a great job of the UX, and it's getting there. It's definitely improving every day. But as those of us who work in the industry, we know how hard it is to make a seamless user experience using this technology. So it's definitely a sort of ongoing process, but I see it getting better each month, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is a lot of work that is happening on that, and a lot of builders are trying to solve that problem of accessibility and making it more easier, making sure that the user interface is actually usable and it's not intimidating for any user, because ultimately I think we're all building for the future wherein users using decentralized applications don't even have to really care about what is happening in the background, and they're using it pretty much akin to Web2 applications, and not necessarily do everyone understand how the Web2 applications work and how does the internet work, but everybody's on it anyway.
No, I definitely agree with that, and I think it's sort of there's a little bit of an art of like simplifying it enough to give that experience, but still at the same time, so what we try to do is we have like sort of advanced tabs and areas that we could put more of the complex stuff, like links to smart contract addresses, etc., because we also feel like we don't want to hide that completely away from all users, right? Because if you are curious enough, and some users do want to really dig into the details of this, and as they should, do your own research. I definitely agree with that ethos of making that available to the wider like user group, but then it's not for all users. Some users want to get going, try something out, maybe they're going to put a small amount in, see how they go first, but still having the underlying technology transparent and open for people to dig into if they really want to get into the weeds of that. I think it's kind of the mixing of these two things like together, like that's kind of gets us into something that's usable but also sticks to the original values that we're trying to build for.
Absolutely. I think that is very, very important. So when I say that, okay, we want to build for the future and we want to build where the user is not fully perhaps aware of the intricacies of Web3, I'm just trying to, put forward that it should be easy. Like my parents perhaps, or my grandparents, right? They are online, they're using, say, applications like WhatsApp, but they perhaps are not the most tech savvy, and nevertheless they are on it. So I would like to see a future like that for decentralized applications, obviously still upholding the ethos of open source technology and decentralized technology. That goes without saying.
100%.
So talking a little more about the platform HaloFi, can you perhaps tell us like the user flow? If somebody wants to sign up right now on the platform, what are the kind of features that they can utilize, and how does it work in general if somebody is coming on the platform to sign?
Yeah, so with HaloFi Save, you can go to save.halofi.me and you can connect your wallet. We support pretty much most of the wallets and have Wallet Connect. We also, quite excitingly, we've just the beginning of this year, we've launched a partnership with MiniPay Opera's wallet, and speaking about usability, they've done a fantastic job of building out a very user-friendly wallet that is all centered around stable tokens. So you can pay gas in stable tokens, you can send it to people's numbers, and it's sort of baked into the Opera browser in like a number of locations. So it's really, really amazing work that they've done. And we are one of the kind of first created apps or dApps on there for saving. So you can, if you are a MiniPay user, and they've launched this across, I think the key regions are like Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana. If you're a user there, you can come via MiniPay and then dive into HaloFi Save. But however you reach our app, you're going to get the same experience where you can either start depositing, and we have just an easy way for you to track, and you can actually see your interest go up in real time. We are getting yield from a protocol called Mula, which is a lending and borrowing protocol on Celo. So you can deposit your Celo dollars, CUSD, into there. We also allow users to set a goal. So maybe you're saving for a house or a holiday, a phone, etc. Then you can put in the amount that you want to save, and it will show you your progress along towards that goal. And we also have like a kind of email reminder system, so just giving you that nudge to make those deposits, monthly. So that's what we have at the moment with HaloFi Save. It's the kind of first iteration of the product that we've launched. We will have more features coming in the future, and then we also have another product which is called HaloFi Challenges, which was our original product, and that's still around saving, but it's actually around like gamified saving. So we have essentially smart contracts that ask you to make a weekly or monthly deposit, and as long as you hit deposits in that challenge, we call it, so maybe you need to make 4 weekly deposits into that. As long as you make the deposits, again, we're using similar sorts of yield sources, so Mola. We also work with Aave on Polygon and Base as well, and Curve. And then as long as you hit the goals, you get the interest. If you missed a deposit, so maybe you only did 2 out of 4, then you'd still get back your principal if you wait to the end, but the yield that your deposits generated will go to the people who did complete their saving goals. So these are kind of the two products we have at the moment. One is more focused on gamification and incentivization, and one is just more focused on really easily being able to like hop on and start depositing and making those savings. So it's kind of different focus, but the same mission to kind of, basically empower people to use crypto to kind of grow their personal wealth.
That is cool. That is so cool. It's wonderful. I think that these real use cases are being executed perfectly. And more power to you guys. You guys have the app for being a part of like the 50 most used apps, I think, on like various aggregator tools, as well as you help your users save over, I think, 4 million, right, dollars. And this is something that we've picked up from your website. It's impressive, but can you tell us like a little bit about the response from the users, and if you could share like a success story or a feedback that has really stood out for you while building HaloFi?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of something specific. We have the 4 million that's been saved. That's gone through our HaloFi challenges, saving smart contracts. So we track that. We have some users that are very with that, they're very regular. And actually, it's quite interesting when we look into the stats. I think around like 85 to 90% of people are hitting their goals, which to me feels quite high compared to sort of, at least when when you casually set your own goals yourself, like more than often I actually do forget to deposit for them. So we are seeing like people being very very diligent with it. We also had a bunch of like, I think one of the fun things about being a Web3 product is, you get community memes, you get community artwork. We used to create a lot of NFT giveaways, and we had some really amazing submissions, 3D artwork made by our community. So that was amazing to see. And then recently with our new product, HaloFi Save, we got a bunch of really good feedback. We actually went out to Lagos in Nigeria, where we've been launching the product. We ran some user testing. Obviously, you get a bunch of actionable improvements, which is what you want. But the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. And we even had some community member who traveled a 10-hour round trip to come and do some user testing for us, which was very incredible to see. So yeah, it's been a really positive response from the community.
Right. This is wonderful. That you've seen such a, but honestly, I'm not surprised. I think any kind of a good use case and being executed well, it would see stickiness from the users, and the users will keep coming back to it. Now, let's talk a little about the challenges. Are there any specific challenges that you face in building and growing, specifically the community and the product, and how have you been able to overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you're building any new product, there's like a whole host of different, challenges that you face. One is like, of course, like building something that people actually want and need. So that is kind of, just looking at, do you have product market fit? Is your application usable? So as I mentioned, we've done a bunch of like user testing. Our kind of community moderator, I think, is doing them every week, a session as well. We also we're quite on our analytics, so we're constantly looking at like user flows through the app. We can even see some of how users are using our application, so we're constantly looking at that and trying to figure out, does our application is it solving a real need, and then are we doing it in a way that's usable and makes sense to the users? So that's definitely a challenge, and it's just ongoing work that you have to do. And I think of course like growth and getting awareness for your product is always again like a challenge that any new product and business have. We've been very lucky in our partnerships. So most recently our partnership with Opera MiniPay has brought us a whole host of different users. And then even with HaloFi challenges, we found that sort of doing partnerships and cross marketing was actually very effective. We did a bunch of partnerships with like Avagotchi, and like Cello, Polygon, a whole Cometh, a whole host of different, everything from NFT projects to blockchain protocols to a whole range of different stuff. And I think one of the nice things about the space is you do have these like highly engaged community members who really want to try out new products and will also recommend you to, we've been recommended to connect with other projects via community members, so they can actually be acting as advocates for you, which is quite incredible. So that's definitely something that has been is a
helpful
challenge
to the community.
It's helpful to the community. I'm trying to think, obviously like there's typical problems like just hiring the best talent, making sure that you've got like always, when you're building a new product, you're always like juggling a lot of things, like growing a team, fundraising, building the product. So there's always a whole
There's
host of
always something. Yeah, there's
activities.
a fire every day. Absolutely. Like I totally
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think definitely as a founder, you sort of being able to make quick decisions and
Yeah.
get the data you need, and also like getting enough data to make a decision is also another thing. And kind of being able to make those decisions quickly, I think is something that you learn to do.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely true. It's like I think one of the better things that a founder can do is have clarity and be able to take quick decisions, because it's a dynamic space, and when you're especially starting off and your project or your product is still I think it's a ever dynamic sort of a process. I think the product, you're always iterating, adding something. So your ability to be clear and to take quick action, I think that really takes you very far.
Definitely. I think startups are all about speed, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Bigger companies, they have resource, right? But it can't be simple.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So tell me one more thing, like, as a founder, I'm curious, how did you get your initial traction? Like if you had to give some advice to somebody who's working and to build a product in DeFi, what was the inflection point for you in reaching that traction? Initially, you cannot really gamify a community when
how do you start from zero?
Yeah, how do you start from zero? And when it's basically, I don't want to hear about the financial incentive aspects, because if there are any in your campaigns, because that is some tried and tested stuff. But did you do something out of the box to really get the community going and get that initial traction?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things we did that worked well for us, because I definitely know what you mean. There's that sort of awkward phase when you don't have anyone in your Discord, or like, and you can't really create content when there's no audience, right?
Exactly. Yeah. How do you even know what they want, right? Because there's nobody there. So you're creating content, and it's like a trial and error sort of a phase. You're making it, but you don't know what would work.
Yeah, and you're kind of in a room talking to yourself. Definitely. Though we did when we very started, we did a Gitcoin grant, which was actually quite a nice way, and I would recommend. It's a good way to kind of track, test interest in your product concept. So we got a bunch of donors from that, and then community members, and then also we had quite a fun little kind of mini viral kind of campaign that was based off a quiz, which we did right at the beginning of, I think it was like March 2021. And that, I think it really did capture the imagination of people on Twitter. And we went from like 500 to over 3,000 members in our Discord from that quiz alone. Which takes, I think, these kind of sort of viral campaigns, creating content, creating these kind of quizzes, like you never quite know what's going to work until you put it out there. Exactly. And it can take a bunch of time. I think we spent about a week creating this like quiz content, because making it funny and something that people want to engage with is, you've got to be a bit thoughtful about it. But I think, and then it also depends on where you are in the market cycle. So something that works at the beginning of a bull run is not necessarily going to work when you're deep in the bear. So it's kind of, timing, I think, is important. And like kind of, but I think all of this stuff, it kind of, the more stuff you try, the more likely you are to get a good outcome, because you don't know until you try if it's going to work. And it could be maybe a quiz does work, maybe it's a partnership, maybe it's this. So the more stuff you try, the more likelihood of you getting something successful. And I would say also the other thing is like partnerships are very good as well. I guess like, when we're doing this collaboration on this podcast, I think one of the nice things about the Web3 space is overall people are very collaborative, and sort of a case of kind of growing the pie together, So I think it's a lot less, there's many more opportunities for collaboration than maybe you might get in kind of traditional tech. And I think that's definitely something to lean into if you're new in the space.
Yeah, I think so too. I think just reaching out and perhaps collaborating, finding common grounds where you can add value to other platforms and other founders, that can be extremely helpful, because again, the space is very small, and usually people, more often than not, everybody is like very helpful, and they want to sort of, as you said, grow the pie together. And that becomes like the very foundation on which you can sort of, and becomes a stepping stone for you to perhaps grow your community or just kickstart things. So that's a wonderful answer. Now, let's look a little. I would like to actually ask this as well. Like, how do you perhaps study trends, and how do you decide which features are going to go onto your, on the platform? Do you keep like an open communication with the community on that particular facet as well, or is it more of an internal discussion that you have and decided, okay, this is what you're going to be pushing out next, and this is how you're staying ahead of the curve in this space?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So we do, you know, of course, as a team, we're talking about this a lot. We're also, you know, speaking to you know, our advisors, investors, etc. But we do we will like question the community members and stuff. Sometimes we'll like put out a quick, like, I'm quite fond of doing a little kind of quick emoji vote on Discord, and then even having conversations with community members. We do a bunch of user testing, which I think is really useful for seeing how people are using your application and what is the stumbling blocks there. Also, like when we've been at in-person events, we can kind of see that. So a couple of things that we prioritized end of last year was fiat on-ramping, and then we also have, and we do have this a little bit of, we haven't announced it yet, but we do have account abstraction coming soon. So you'll be able to like log into HaloFi using your Gmail account, which will be amazing.
Wow, that is so cool. Yeah.
No, it's going to be great. I'm really excited for it. Because one of the things that we noticed when we were at the booth, and this is at East Safari in Kenya, is that, you know, people are coming up and they see the value proposition of saving in dollars and getting yield on it. It's very clear. And they're excited by it, but, you know, they don't have a wallet or they don't have any crypto. So these kind of, and these are the stuff that you know it's an issue, but when you're there in person, it just reminds you, you know, so you're like, okay, no, this is actually a really big problem. I need to prioritize this over like whatever cool new feature I want to put that's, you know, maybe more interesting to me as a, you know, a heavy DeFi user. So I think always speaking to the community, I think there's something that people say when you're speaking to users, it's sort of listen for the pain points, but not necessarily the solutions, which I think can be a good way to approach it, because, you know, it's also that balance of you have deep context of the product as a builder. And people, you're going to get a lot of suggestions about what to build, but kind of understanding why somebody wants that, and what is the pain point, I think is potentially more useful than, you know, getting a million more feature suggestions. And one thing I have to push back on quite a lot, and we get this all the time, and community members will probably hate me for this, but dark mode. But you know, it's like, I know it's nice, and like we will put it there, like when we just have like a bit.
It can't be the highest priority. Yeah,
it's a nice priority, but like, yeah, so kind of weighing up these kind of competing demands all the time, right?
Yeah. No, I think you know, more than the aesthetics of it. Obviously, the aesthetics matter, and you know, the user experience definitely is paramount. But it's very important for, as a founder, to be able to take that call. You know, how are you going to be prioritizing these features, and what making sure that, you know, you're using the resources at your disposal most efficiently. And I think that can be a little bit of a line to toe, but you know, I think good founders that are able to create sustainable brands and that are scaling successfully, they're able to do that very well.
Definitely.
So tell us a little about your team, and you know, are you guys, is it like a remote system that you have, or do you guys have offices? Tell us a little about that.
No, we are remote. So we do have a few people in the same country. I actually don't think we have anyone in the same city. But I'm based out of London. My co-founder Francis, he's based out of New York. We have team members, you know, very distributed. We have Brazil, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya.
Wow, nice, very distributed. I think that is just how things are after COVID, and also in Web3 in general. And I think it's wonderful because, you know, geography does no longer seem like a problem, especially, you know, when you are looking to hire good talent.
No, definitely. And being able to have that kind of global pool of talent to hire from is really exciting. Especially for us, because we are building for a global audience, but also we have, at the moment, we do have a focus on like Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana. So having team members out there who have knowledge of the market and the problem space there, I think is really invaluable. And I think with crypto at the moment, especially when we talk about sort of consumer use cases and real use cases, I think almost like we're going to see a lot of that innovation come from outside of like Europe and America, because people are, you know, there are real problems with, you know, payment infrastructure, getting access to finance, etc. And people are really finding creative solutions to that. And there's a lot of innovation going on, just outside of places that maybe, typically have more funding and more established tech communities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think this would have been my next question. I would have, because you're building for the world and you're building in the DeFi space, compliance can at times, and just making sure that you're on the right side of the law, because with different jurisdictions comes like different kinds of compliance that you might have to adhere to or follow, if at all the case. Is that in any way a challenge for you guys? And is that how you are perhaps deciding on which countries to roll out your services in first? Or focus on which countries?
Yeah, so it's not actually, for us, it's not really been, I mean, obviously we look at like the legal situation and stay on the right side of the law. But for us, it's more of like, where can we add value to our users and where can we see a really solid use case for our product? Because we don't want to build for just degens or people there's a lot of products out there, and there's nothing wrong with them, because I think a lot of these products have brought a huge amount of innovation to the space also. But the main user group are people who maybe got into crypto early and have a very high net worth, etc. And for these users, like throwing around like 10K is like not a big deal, right? Or they can spend all day like yield farming, etc. And trading NFTs, etc. Whatever is the kind of zeitgeisty thing to do. But we wanted to, because we want to really kind of help onboard people to crypto who aren't in the space, and then also use crypto to solve real problems and really help people kind of build their wealth with crypto. For us, it's like finding the right way to use crypto that is actually going to be adding value, and not just a game, is kind of really important to us. And I think this is kind of why we have a focus on this region of the world at the moment, because we really do see that it is actually, you can use crypto to build a more transparent, a more integrated financial system, and actually help people get exposure to financial tools that they wouldn't otherwise be able to access.
Right. I think that is absolutely key there. So now, talking a little about the future, what are the kind of bigger milestones that you're looking forward for with HaloFi? Like, are you guys, you did mention account abstraction as something that is coming up, and I'm so glad that you shared it with our listeners, and everybody must be really excited about it. But is there any other bigger milestone that you're looking at which really excites you?
Yeah, so this is a good question. Of course, beginning of the year, we've been doing a bunch of roadmap planning and everything. There are some things that I really can't mention that are in the roadmap, but account abstraction is very much coming soon. .tm. But we're close to finalizing that. We will also be, one of our priorities is to get a wider range of like yield sources, so that users have more variety in what yield and return that they can get on their crypto. Also looking at ways that we can maybe bring a little bit of gamification into HaloFi Save and kind of make it rewarding to users in that way. We are constantly doing user testing, so we've got improvements to our UI coming almost weekly, definitely monthly. So that's an ongoing thing. But yeah, we do have some quite exciting things in the pipeline, but I can't mention them just yet, unfortunately.
All right, okay. So we will be waiting for your next update with bated breath, because what you're building is very exciting. And as I said, this is something that I feel more excited about, because I think it's so important that use cases be created around real problems that people have, and with real users who are perhaps able to utilize that platform for their own age, for their to solve their own problem without any financial incentive, external financial incentive perhaps. So more power to you, really, Rachel. This is wonderful.
Awesome. Well, thank you. No, it's that's great to hear. It's very, very kind of you.
So I would love to know a little more from you, and now we're zooming out a little bit, about just the market in general. What is your take on where the markets stand right now? And what do you think is going to be one of the driving factors, or a few driving factors? I think everybody says that the Bitcoin halving is going to be a driving factor for the next bull run. But apart from that, what do you think it would take for the market to pull out of where it is right now? It's doing relatively better, but nevertheless.
Yeah, so of course, this is the $1 billion question, right? And I think, the Bitcoin halving is a big one. Of course, we've also, seen a Bitcoin ETF. Whether more ETFs come onto the marketplace, I think that will be definitely a big thing for driving growth in, I guess, in Europe and America. I'm really interested in seeing the evolution of like the real world asset space. So bonds and shares, etc., coming on chain. I think something that we're looking at is how can we get our users more exposure to yield from real world assets, because I think that is very compelling to users who kind of want to see what the yield is backed up from. So that's super exciting. What will be driving it? Like, I couldn't quite say, but I think, obviously we do have big institutions coming on, and, we are seeing things getting increasingly tokenized. So I think maybe we're actually going to go a little bit. I mean, I know the end of the last bull run became very NFT driven. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that will be quite the narrative of the next one, and maybe it is going to be more around the kind of financialization of bringing real world assets on chain, and then also bringing on chain assets into the real world via ETFs, etc.
Yeah, I think that is one. Real world asset tokenization has just gained like a little traction now. I think more people are talking about it. Obviously, it's been around for a while, but more and more people are taking interest in it, and especially with the ETF coming in, perhaps how these two can intersect. It would be interesting to see, and I think it would have bigger ramifications as well.
Definitely. But it's always a difficult question, right? The market cycle does always surprise you a little bit as well.
Yeah, yeah. You should never try to time it.
Yeah, I did not see NFTs coming as big as they did. So
yeah, same
I'm often
here.
wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah, same here. I've actually stopped. Like I think as when I started off, I used to try to time the market, but that was stupid of me. But now I don't do that, and completely agree on the NFTs. But I did not see that as well. Like I used to really think not very fondly of NFTs when they had initially come around with the CryptoKitties and just the digital art aspect of it. But as we move forward, and obviously even that became very big, and I couldn't understand for a long time as to why it's gaining the kind of traction it was. But now with NFTs, we're seeing so many use cases. It's absolutely wonderful to see that kind of evolution that has happened.
No, definitely. And I guess with NFTs, and I'm less in the NFT space, but like seeing this kind of merger of like internet culture and NFTs is really creative to see like what comes out of that, and that's quite fascinating. I also think it's going to be an interesting time for like DAOs and more kind of established, that process becoming more mature. And I think we've seen this with like the evolution of like delegates, etc. And I think that will be an interesting one to see as well. So yeah, like it's going to be definitely will be an interesting time, and I feel, I don't know, touch wood, hopefully things slowly getting better,
Yeah, absolutely. You and me both, we are both hoping for that. So here's to perhaps that. And, with that, I would like to perhaps come to the last few questions because we're running out of time. We're already over time, actually. But I would just love to know, as somebody who's been in this space for a while, and, you've also done the teaching bit, what are the kind of resources that you would recommend to builders and who are just starting off perhaps in Web3?
This is a good question, and I think it's always changing a lot. I definitely would say
very dynamic.
Anyone who's getting into Web3, especially if you're coming from a Web2 background, and even my knowledge on this is going to be a little bit out of date because I haven't been learning Solidity for quite a while now, but like I definitely found, like, for example, when you step into the space, things like documentation are not going to be as comprehensive and as battle tested as you would get with Web2 products. But I think what I would say to counterbalance that is the upside that you have is that there is an amazing community and amazing developer communities. So there's a number of different Discords that I was in I'm using them less now, but certainly when we're building the early prototypes of HaloFi and Good Ghosting, that I could jump in there and be like, oh, like, I don't know why it's doing this. And somebody would actually answer my question and give me help and support on that. And I think definitely if you are working with, I don't know, if you're building on whatever blockchain, Celo, or if you're building with whichever protocol or SDK, they all have discords and channels, and be prepared to go into those and ask. And if something's not working in the tutorial or the documentation, ask about it, because it's probably like stuff moves fast and it's probably out of date. So that would be my number one like approach to learning in this space is be hungry and ask a lot. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, I think for me, there was a number of channels that I use, but actually, I'm my mind is a little bit foggy this morning. I need another cup of coffee, but things like going to a hackathon, I think, is a great way to get indoctrinated into the space and then meet a lot of people. And even that's how the actual original idea of HaloFi came from an ETH Global Hackathon back in 2020. So many exciting things can come out of hackathons, even company formation.
Absolutely. I think that is very, very true. Hackathons can be great places to really start off, kick off, or just build your idea initially. And even, if you're foggy, happens to the best of us, by the way. That is absolutely okay. I think you did give some really good recommendations. So Rachel, again, I'm very, very grateful that you could do this call and record this podcast with me. Before we wrap this up, I would like to merge the last two questions. This is something you've kind of already covered in this conversation, and this is something I ask everybody who comes on the show, and especially people who've come from Web2. What would be your two suggestions for people to start living on blockchain? And any parting words before we wrap this up?
Yeah, so I would just say try things out. I think it's always good to get a little bit of a test wallet, pull a small amount of Ethereum or whichever. I mean, maybe experimenting on Ethereum is pretty expensive these days with gas, so pick a low gas blockchain. Try out apps, dApps, and if you're going to, a lot of the time you can even find like boilerplate for what you need to deploy. So Open Zeppelin have a bunch of ERC20 contracts, basically any kind of standard contract they have there, which you can deploy it to a test net as well, and then you can mess around with the parameters and learn, and there's no risk of losing any real value. So that would be my first one. And just chat to people, go to events, follow on Twitter. I know Twitter can be a bit chaotic, but I think it's still probably the best place to keep up to date with industry trends and news. So really that's my advice.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. And before we wrap this up, Rachel, any parting thoughts?
No, just that I'm very excited that we're actually kind of entering a new era for crypto, and a new stage where we're focusing on building value for users. It's also exciting that I think we had a stage where there was a lot of focus on infrastructure, and that has been good because we've seen more infrastructure come out. But of course, as building a consumer product, I'm glad to see that now building for consumers starting to have a little bit of airtime again, and actually trying to find those products that do have product market fit and give their users real value.
Yeah, I think building in crypto or Web3 has basically different eras. I think initially everybody was working on different chains, and then people were working very heavily on infrastructure, and then there was the NFT boom, and a slight derailment was perhaps how everybody wanted to use machine language and a little bit of AI here and there. And now I think we seem to be a little right on track with the utility products and consumer facing products, which will actually really help in building the ecosystem further.
Definitely. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much once again, Rachel, for taking out the time to speak to me. I'm very, very grateful. This has been a wonderful conversation.
And thank you so much for having me. It's likewise been a great conversation on my end, so excited about it.